Welcome to Tamil Chuvai on Radio Mirchi 1310, Mr. Sonam Wangchuk. My name is RJ Sudha and I'm the host of Tamil Chuvai. It's my honor to have you on my show and more so in meeting you in person. Thanks for accepting to come on to my show.
Thank you, Sudha, and all the listeners of Tamil Chuvai.
Yeah,
Chuvai.
yes.
Yeah? Okay.
Tamil Chuvai means a taste of Tamil in Tamil.
Okay.
You've been a recipient of several national and international awards. Most recently, the Magsaysay Award. Hearty congratulations for you on that. For your work on education, social entrepreneurship, architecture, environment, and more, the list goes on. Which one of these fields is very close to your heart, and any reason why?
Mm-hmm. Well, for most of the things in life, education is the base. So that's why I would say education as a route on which then, knowledge and skills and understanding for environment, health, well-being of all kinds, all are connected. So education, definitely.
Okay, thank you for that. And how has your personal experience as a child molded your way of thinking as an adult? Who has been your mentor?
So my childhood was a little different from most. I was born in a very tiny village with 5 households, and we didn't have a school. And I grew up to later find out that it was not a bad thing at all. It was good luck for me that I was spared the harsh schooling which insults you, breaks you, makes you feel not good and so on. So I grew up at my home in a remote Ladakhi village, learning from life, from people around. I keep joking with my friends and I say, when you were learning roots and shoots and leaves from pages of a book, I was actually planting a seed and seeing them grow. So that's
having
how
a real life learning.
Exactly.
Okay.
So that experience made me think about what you need to learn, because once I was dragged into school at 9, I had a lot of problems in school and then slowly caught up and started doing well. But it made me think a lot about what a child goes through. And later in my engineering years, I had to teach students to earn the expenses of my engineering education. And that opened another world of how young people learn and the problems they face in their education. So these experiences molded my work, which I started doing later in life.
And do you have any specific mentor that who you like to dedicate all your achievements to?
Well, I normally don't believe in one big mentor. I mean, I learn from many people. Many ordinary people inspire me with their extraordinary little things that they may do. But at a young age, my mother was my biggest mentor. As I said, we had no schools, but she taught me in her mother tongue. She was not schooled, but highly educated though.
Real life education.
Yes. And she could read and write her mother tongue, and that's... So I was actually a very lucky child in today's India. Children don't get to learn in their mother tongue, and that's a great asset which we lose. We impose languages that they don't have a grasp, and therefore it doesn't open the window to
Naturally,
the world.
they don't grasp.
Yes. It's always a second, barrier in between. So I was very lucky to get directly in my own language, and I always stress that we should not ignore our mother tongues at early childhood.
Got it. Very good. That's a good point. And you had mentioned that education is the most passionate field out of all that, and you also mentioned that education is a fundamental building block for anything else that you have achieved in life. What is your advice for students of this generation? How can we keep our younger generation motivated?
What I would say is that, education is not just about like science and maths that is made to be everything nowadays. You can be good at anything, multiple intelligences we are supposed to have, and it's only an anomaly of our times that after industrial revolution we started giving extra emphasis to maths and science, and we can now see what that revolution has done to the planet. It's almost becoming a question of our survival. So it's equally important that we start recognizing other aspects, other intelligences, and respect and love our children for all that they may possess, other than these few narrow things. So therefore I really believe that children should be allowed to be good in whatever they feel good in, rather than make them drop those and acquire or artificially impose on them things that society seems to respect now.
Okay,
So
very good.
that's what I would really say.
That actually, you actually answered one of my other questions I had in mind about the latest craze about STEM, science, technology, education. There's so much of stress wherever I go. In fact, if you're a computer science engineer, we are all encouraged to go and teach STEM to school, local students and all that. And everywhere you go, there are a lot of institutes that are coming up that focuses so much on STEM. But what you're saying is we don't have to narrow our vision and the path towards that, but leave it to the child to go seek out what their strengths are. That's good. That's very good to know. And could you tell us about the students' educational and cultural movement of Ladakh, what you call SECMOL?
Yeah, so SECMOL was the organization that we started as soon as I finished my own college education. This was in response to the mess that my region was in educationally. I come from the mountains, far remote mountains, where very little of what works in the plains work. So the environment is different, the context is different, the language is different, and because of all these and blind transplanting of something from New Delhi or Srinagar to the mountains, children used to fail in large numbers. 95% of students used to fail in their 10th grade in those days. So I could not just sit as a spectator. This I came across when I was teaching 10th grade students. So I very soon thought that rather than joining the crowd of engineers seeking jobs, I would rather do something about this education system. So as soon as I finished my engineering, together with other like-minded people in Ladakh, we started a formal organization called SECMOL, or Students' Educational and Cultural Movement of Ladakh, through which we initially thought we could help students take their exams better and pass better, but very soon we realized that you could help them in that last year or 11th hour. But the system will keep producing such broken products, and we'll have to keep doing that for another 50 years. So we stopped that and started bringing changes in the schools, in the villages, in the primary years, so that the system doesn't break them in the first place, and we don't have to do the charity of helping them. So that's what then we got into doing, bringing reforms in government school system. That's what.
How easy was it to work with the government, or was it you're working slightly against the government at the same time you're working along with the government, both contradictory and supplementary? How easy was it with respect to working with the Indian government?
Yeah, it's not easy, but if you are strategic, you can do. For example, if we had gone in those days, in early 90s, to the commissioner's office or minister's office and said, we would like to, correct your system. They would have said, get lost.
Exactly.
Exactly. So we didn't do that. We didn't do that. We went to one village school, convinced one village to change, one school to change, and officials around that school to accept the change. And once in a year or so the changes started showing results, people became very interested, and villages surrounding wanted it. And then in 2 years we spread it out to 30 villages. And when it was 30 villages and all the villagers and all the children in the first school were happy, the teachers were happy, the people were happy, that's when we went to the government and said, this is the problem in the system, and this is what we did in one school, and these are the results, and they are all happy. So of course they couldn't say no, get lost.
Can I ask one question? When you say you started seeing the results in the first village and slowly it started developing to other 30 villages and eventually you went to the government, will you be able to explain what the result was?
So the result was not about like passing and failing in exams. It was the enthusiasm that the children developed around the things that they were supposed to study. We changed the textbooks to make them relevant to the mountains. These would be books brought straight from New Delhi, which had things about mangoes and elephants. You don't see them in the mountains, so it confuses children. So we adapted them locally and trained the teachers to make it more experiential, hands-on, games and songs and so on. So the teachers were very excited, happy.
Teachers can also relate.
That
right?
was a result.
Okay.
Parents were very happy that the children were eager to go to school rather than run away from school. That was a result. And children were happy to learn. That was a result. So these results is what we showed, and the teachers found it actually easier to teach this way.
Very nice.
When the children are enthusiastic.
The teachers are actually the first students, and then once you have convinced them, and it's easier for them also to teach their students. And what do you think about the education system? Has it changed for the better over the years, or for the rest of India, maybe rest of the world, for good or for bad?
Well, education has to adapt to the times and to the context. When that doesn't happen, it falls behind. So that's what I think is happening in the short term and in the long term. In the short term, schools are using the curriculum from, say, 80s, 90s, things that are no longer in use, are still taught. For example, there were books that talked about using DDT. When half the world has banned it, has seen how much harm it does, the children start again with those things. And even generally in the longer term and bigger picture, what we learn in schools today is like from 300 years ago, when industrial revolution was the biggest thing happening, and when exploiting nature and production and consumption was the biggest goal of development. Today it should be the opposite. It should be actually to heal the damages done by these 300 years. So the schooling needs to change accordingly. It should be about healing, not hurting. When somebody is sick with, say, alcohol, you don't keep giving them alcohol. You have to give things that heal them.
Yes.
So we are still giving them what we are drugged with, this economy of consumption. And that's what I feel amiss.
And of course, the Wikipedia and anything about you, when I look up, talks about the ice stupa technique. How imminent do you think is the global warming phenomenon?
I think by now it is beyond doubt that yes, it is happening, and it is man-made reasons, and therefore we have two ways to go about it, one very local and one global. Locally, like in mountains like my region, Ladakh, we can only adapt to it, so we can be resilient and survive. And therefore, we are coming up with ideas like seasonal artificial glaciers to provide water in scarcity because of fast melting glaciers now that global warming is a reality. That's the local short-term adaptation strategy. The other is that it's still time for the world to know the consequences of the lifestyle they're adopting and mend their ways, so that we in the mountains don't have to face this. Tomorrow you in the big cities will face the same. So we can't have different results by doing the same old thing. We'll have to change our ways. And therefore, I always say, and through your medium, through your radio, I will say to the people that you in the big cities, if you live simply, then we in the mountains may simply live.
That's true. Very true. Very true. And UN has brought about recently about banning or minimizing straws because it takes several years for it to actually get away from the system, and India has taken up a lot of effort. US has taken up a lot of effort. Besides this trivial thing as straw, I'm sure there are bigger problems that is causing environmental damage, the ocean damage, anything. What, according to you, is a bigger damage than using of a straw, plastic straw?
Generally plastics.
Yes, yeah, generally plastic.
Yeah.
That is it.
Yeah, so the world is discovering more and more. It was a new thing. They didn't know what they were, hitting. Yes. And by now you can see how it's damaging not only humans but animals, oceans. We in Ladakh in the 90s, mothers in Ladakh saw that it was killing our cows. Dead cows would have plastic in their stomach. So Ladakh was perhaps one of the first places in maybe the world that banned plastic bags in 95 or something. Really? Yes, so it has been banned for more than 20 years in Ladakh. Yes, but the bigger world needs to act. I hope the mothers of the world come out again, like in Ladakh, to take charge, because mothers always have this very compassionate,
instinct also.
Exactly, instinct towards life. Yes. And it's time we did something about it. Little inconveniences should not deter right to life for other beings, fellow beings on this planet.
So you said 1995 Ladakh realized we were probably the first ones in the world, in the earth, to realize the problems with plastic. That is wonderful to know. Also sad to know, but we did not have the propagation or the media to sell it across the world at that time. What keeps you going? What is the secret behind turning so many innovative and unconventional thinking?
I mean, it's nothing big nor a secret. It's just that being sympathetic, empathetic, and sensitive to issues around and wanting to solve them. I think it should be normal human nature that when you see problems, you want to solve them. And if you are not so affected by schooling, then you come up with ideas that you do what it takes to solve them. So yeah, I don't think I'm doing anything special. As I say often, that when you see your house is on fire, it's not special if you throw water. It is normal human response. Yes. If you don't, it is something special, and you should ask why you are not doing. If somebody is doing what he should be doing, we shouldn't ask.
Okay, so you are telling me that you're doing just the normal thing that any human being should do. My final question for you would be, how can the world have more Sonam Wangchuks? How can parents raise kids like you?
No. That's what I wouldn't like to see. I would like to see kids getting a chance to be themselves, and be raised to reflect the best in them. And I'm sure there'll be so many different personalities, so much better than what little I have done. So yes, giving kids the freedom to be and to be the best of themselves is what I would say.
Excellent. Vinky, do you have any questions?
Yeah, I have only one question for you. Especially in the capitalist world, you can take the Americas or any country in the West, right? If somebody were to innovate and invent and come up with something like an ice stupa, their first reaction would be to commercialize it and make money out of it. Did that thought ever come through your mind? And what would be your advice to budding engineers who have to decide whether to go the commercialized path or something, innovating for humanity, humanitarian gains? What would be your advice?
Well, all this behind these inclinations is your interest in being rich and so on. I believe in a different kind of richness, which is of being able to give in different ways. And like Buddha said, for human beings, it's a greater achievement to conquer one single desire than to fulfill 1,000 desires. So my belief in richness is not about being rich to fulfill your 1,000 desires. It's more about working inwards to conquer those desires so that you don't need and yet feel fulfilled. And there you then don't need, to make a huge lot of money to feel relevant or feel happy. And therefore, my effort actually has been to fight against this tendency to own up, possess everything, ideas. So I actually believe in making ideas available for everybody to use. So whether it is iStupa or others, I actively work so that it can be copied and it can be used widely. And I understand that for many there won't be incentives enough to innovate if there was no money. But for that you need to change your values. If you innovate not only for money but for the common good of the people, then you might continue.
So in some ways it depends on the nature of the problem you're trying to solve. If it's for the general well-being of the humanity, maybe the goal should be just that, rather than try and commercialize.
Yeah, definitely. That's right.
So that is the difference between a materialistic world and not so materialistic world, more of a humanitarian filled world. That is the difference.
And it's also the difference between Asian view of the world and Western, capitalistic world. Whereas in Asia, we are more social. We see ourselves part of the bigger society, and in its well-being is our well-being. So we have always tended to share everything, not possess and own. And
Absolutely. Okay. Thank you for your time, Sonamji. We wish you good luck. We wish the world to receive more and more benefits from your presence, and more people who will be benefited by your work. Thank you very much.
Thank you.